Championship week in college football is here already, Mark. Can you believe it?
Bring it on, Greg. That's all I can say. A lot of good-looking football games this weekend, and that only means one thing. The college bowls are right around the corner.
Yeah, you're going to be quite busy starting what? Monday?
Starting Monday, after the championship games are played this weekend, they begin filling in all the bowls, and from that point forward, we go to work 24/7 on our college bowl stat report. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun for sure.
And there was a lot of work that we went into putting together our preseason shows.
Yes.
And I decided to take a look at what all of our predictions and see, what we did good at and so forth. And so I think we had a pretty good, I guess you could say, our prognosis was pretty decent considering the fact that we had some sleepers. We had some, kind of mini long shots. Let's go through them.
Sure.
So, championship sleepers. Now, I had three that hung around till the end and just one left. And you had one as well that hung out to the end. We both had Tennessee at 100-1. I had LSU at 90-1. And so both of our picks ended in really the last 2 weeks. We had those, and LSU would have still been alive if they had beaten Texas A&M. The only one that's left is Michigan. I had Michigan at 40-1.
Nice.
So right now, of course, they're 3-1. Even though we just heard Blake Corum is out now, more than likely may not return in time for the playoffs. But it is what do we have? Almost a month, 3 weeks before the first playoff game. I guess it depends on what kind of knee surgery he had. Sometimes these surgeries nowadays, you could be out for a week or two. So who knows? But because I honestly, I don't think Michigan can. I'd be surprised if they won a championship without Corum. But then again, I didn't expect them to blow out Ohio State either. Okay, let's now your Big Ten sleeper. And I don't know how many of these you're gonna remember. Your Big Ten sleeper was Purdue.
Nice.
So
there we go. We're playing this weekend. Yes.
They're an official sleeper. Yes. In the AAC championship, we both had Central Florida winning the championship. They're in the championship game. So I'm not predicting them to win the championship game, but we both have them. Nice hedge, I guess you can call it, if that happens. You had Clemson win the ACC championship. And this was a good one. We talked about this one most of the season. You had Kansas State winning the Big 12 championship. And they were probably like the fifth or sixth team when the season started to win the championship. You had Utah winning the Pac-12. So we'll see whether or not that sticks with your prediction coming up when we preview the championship game in a little bit. In the Mountain West and in the conference and in the Sun Belt, we both had the same picks, and they're both so far so good. We both had Boise beating Fresno, and we both had Coastal Carolina beating Troy. Well, and Coastal Carolina and Troy were not the preseason favorites to play in the Sun Belt Championship game.
That's nice. All four teams you just mentioned are right there playing this weekend. You couldn't ask for anything more, really.
No. Conference USA. Now, we both had Texas San Antonio repeating. You had Texas San Antonio beating North Texas.
Nice.
So that's 3 championship games in the group of 5 out of the 5 that you have the correct 2 teams in the championship. My MAC sleeper was Ohio.
Nice.
So sort of like your Purdue.
Yes.
So that's what we had. Those were our best predictions before the season. So that's a lot of good stuff. I mean, you can't always be 100% right, but more than enough good stuff to go around and make a little bit of futures money on.
For sure. And if some of these plays and teams that you mentioned do cash this weekend, it'll end up proving to be highly profitable because there were some long shots, as you said, Ohio University being one of them, Kansas State being one of them,
Purdue.
Purdue being one of them. And just the likes of the fact that you had Tennessee on your list and they went so far, so good for so long, that's very noteworthy. LSU lived up to their billing. They lived up to the paycheck they're giving Brian Kelly. They're not going to make it to obviously the college football playoff with 3 losses, but at least they're in the SEC championship game, which is a big feather in the cap of Brian Kelly.
I just look. We both had Tennessee as 100-1 before the season began, and in my mind, they should still be in it. Look, I don't think Alabama really has a chance in my mind. I don't think there's any way that they're going to be in the playoffs. I just don't. But I don't know how you put Alabama ahead of Tennessee. I just don't know how you do that. I mean, what are they looking at? Didn't Tennessee beat Alabama? What is it? What are we doing here?
Exactly. And you're talking a 2-loss Alabama football team on name and reputation, and obviously that's tarnished this football season here. I think it would be a real reach to put Alabama ahead of Tennessee for sure.
Okay, so speaking of the playoffs, Georgia, we know that the consensus seems to be that Georgia, Michigan, and TCU can all lose this week and will still end up in the playoffs. That seems to be what I'm hearing from a lot of the experts, a lot of everything I've searched, and I completely agree with what they're saying. The one team that can't afford to lose is USC.
No.
Because if USC loses, the door opens for Ohio State. They go in. That's it. And that's why I just don't think Alabama has a chance anyway. Because I agree with what I'm hearing. That even if Michigan or TCU lose, they're not going to. Alabama will not jump them. That's just what I'm hearing, and I agree with that. Of course, I still see it to believe it that Alabama is not going to get special treatment, but that would make the most sense to me.
There's a scenario out there playing out this weekend that if it happens, and it could likely happen, where we could have 2 teams that are not going to be in the college football playoffs that might be the one bowl game that would be most watched by everybody. That would be Ohio State playing Alabama in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, there you go.
How nice is that, huh?
That would be an awesome game.
Yes, it would.
If Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud play.
And how nice would that be? 2 Heisman contender quarterbacks going to probably go 1-2 in the draft. That would be a real nice must-watch bowl game for sure.
That's the question now. Will they play?
Right.
We hope they do. And all this NIL money and all these other ways that they're paying these players, maybe they need to come up with some sort of an insurance policy, kick in or something, somebody that will keep these kids in these situations. But in 2024, we will have the 12 best teams in the country, you would expect, in the playoffs. And therefore, any team that would be considered the 13th best team, it's not going to be Alabama, Ohio State kind of game.
No.
So I don't, that's something we probably won't have to worry about too much longer. Sure. Most of these kids are not going to bolt for the NFL draft if they're in the playoffs in college football, they're just not going to do it. So,
speaking of NIL money and the money that's being paid these days, the ludicrous amount of money that's being paid to these players, these college athletes, with regard to Stroud and the Alabama quarterback as well, don't you think if you were the NIL sponsor, you'd want them to be in that Rose Bowl? I mean, they would only be enhancing your product.
Maybe that's where that extra money can come from.
Yes.
But again, it's one more year. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a player for next season before the 2024 playoffs kick in, maybe that would be something nice to see. I don't know whether it'll happen, but yeah. Hey, if it was my money, that's what I do.
For sure.
Say, I'll double the money if you're in a bowl game and you're not in the playoffs and you play and you play the whole game.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So Michigan is the only other team that has low odds to win the championship. They're at 3-1. Georgia's at minus around 150, depending on what sports book you go to. Ohio State's the third choice. And they're not even in the playoffs right now. They need losses to get into the playoffs, but they're 8-1. I understand why, because there is a big difference between making the playoffs and winning the championship. USC and TCU were 12-1, and Bama 60-1. So not only is it going to be kind of fluky for Alabama to get in, but then they'd have to win it. So I can understand why those numbers are pretty big. I guess I don't know. What do you think? Ohio State or USC or TCU? Out of those three teams, you had to put money on one of those three to win the championship. Based on those odds, which one would you do?
Ohio State, TCU, and which team?
USC.
I would say Ohio State, and I would say if for no other reason, the fact that they don't have a minefield that they have to get past this weekend. It's
so
not,
that means you would be banking on USC losing.
Yes, which I think is a distinct possibility.
Which is a possibility. Ohio State gets in, and then they would more than likely first game they would play would probably be Georgia, but you'd have to beat them anyway to win the championship.
Just cash that ticket, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And you're 8-1. So if you think about that, if you put money on Ohio State right now at 8-1, you're 8-1 money line now. And if they if they play in the playoffs, their money line is only going to be about what, 250?
Probably, right? Yeah.
So you've already got 8. Now I know you got to win another game, but if you beat Georgia, chances are Ohio State probably be a favorite in the championship game.
Look at it like this: Georgia, Michigan, TCU. They have to win this week and 2 playoff games. You have to win 3 games. Ohio State only has to win 2 games if they make it into the college football playoffs. The 2 playoff games.
Well, I mean, again, they can win. They don't really have to, Georgia, Michigan, or TCU, which is what I said. They could lose and still get to the playoffs. But yeah, they still have to win. You would think. The bottom line is they got to play an extra game.
True.
So you don't know what's going to happen there. We saw what happened to Alabama's players when they had to play extra games with their injured players last year. That cost them the championship. And then, like I said, Blake Corum now. Look, last week when we talked about this Michigan-Ohio State game, I mean, I pointed out specifically that the only way Michigan would win is if J.J. McCarthy had several big plays down the field. Several. Not one, several. I said whatever. I said 30, 40, 50-yard plays down the field. He did it. I didn't expect it, but he did it. Now that everybody kind of knows the game plan a little bit, okay, now they can throw the ball and run the ball. It'll make things a little bit tougher for them whenever they play that first playoff game. But still, I wonder how much better. I mean, obviously they're not better off without Blake Corum. We know that. But is it a one-game thing? Did everything just work out for them because Knowles was sort of like the Don Brown of Michigan defensive coordinators, that it was all man-on-man coverage, and Michigan exploited that? Because I'll tell you right now, Michigan is not exploiting Georgia man-on-man coverage, because that's what Georgia does. Georgia's got top first-round draft picks covering guys. And that's why you need to have your full allotment of superstars, which Michigan will not have. It would without potentially Blake Corum. So, but I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's better that they've proven it to themselves that they can do this, or now that the cat's out of the bag and other teams can see that they can throw the ball, if you pay too much attention to the run game, that now we'll prepare for that too?
Well, that's exactly how Ohio State lost the football game, is they stacked the box, tried to stop the run, and they allowed the wide open big bust play passes to happen.
Which they didn't see on film all year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody saw that on film all year.
So Jim Knowles, the Ohio State defensive coordinator, that was his game plan. Okay. It blew up on him. Okay. Obviously, it made JJ look like he's a good NFL type quarterback. But you and I could have completed those passes. Those guys were so wide open. So, no, figuratively, I should say. But the fact of the matter is, now that there's game plan or game film on that, it's not going to happen again. Not going down the road for Michigan in big football games. You're not going to see teams making the mistake that Ohio State made, and they're going to end up forcing Michigan to run the football, which they can do. Obviously, they can do, and
Not as well without Corum, though.
but not as well without Corum. Exactly
No.
right. So if they go without Corum and they force them to run the football, could be a little bit different story for Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was. I mean, I'll tell you right now, as a fan, and I'm almost still kind of speechless in a way about what took place. Just did that happen? We're talking about the second half. Michigan, Ohio State, and going back over the memories of watching Michigan, Ohio State for, I guess, 40 years now, 40 plus years as a fan. I got to tell you, I probably only would say that there's two other moments that were bigger, and that was Desmond Howard, Charles Woodson. Those 2 years. Those are the only other. This is just so to me. This is top three, and I don't and that's saying something because they've had a lot of wins over Ohio State in the last 40 years. So it was impressive, definitely, and it was something that I don't know. I mean, look. I have no delusions about Georgia, that matchup. I just don't. Not to say that they can't beat them, but because now I've got the proof that they can if they can actually put all of this together, which I've been waiting for all season. But still, it's going to be a big feat for them to be able to accomplish that. But they won't have to play Georgia until more than likely. See, that's the only thing that would be interesting. We said, okay, if Michigan loses, TCU loses, and Georgia loses. But let's say Georgia wins and Michigan and TCU lose and they get to the playoffs. How does that change the rankings? Now, all of a sudden, do we see... We probably still see TCU 4.
I don't know about that.
Well, if they lose, where else would they be but 4?
5.
Well, again, that means Alabama's getting in.
Well,
again, I'm saying if Michigan loses and TCU loses,
open,
but unless again, that's also if USC loses.
well, if TCU loses this week, regardless of what Michigan does, I still think TCU will be out of the college football playoff. I think they have to win to be in, personally. They come out of the clouds from nowhere. They had what is looked to be a fortuitous, real lucky type football season. Yes, they disposed of everybody in their path, but they did it in miraculous ways, to say the least. And so oftentimes we see the worst loss of the season for undefeated teams is the last game they play. Because if it's not ingrained in the memory of the playoff committee, it's what people remembered and then what they saw last. That loss, per se, that Ohio State just had, yes, it was their last game, but it wasn't this past weekend. It was still Ohio State. So I think, honestly, I think TCU is on a little bit more of a slippery slope here this weekend. I think most people even anticipate, because just the fact that they go in undefeated this weekend, I think, does not ensure them making.
Oh yeah, I don't think it ensures them. I agree.
Right.
It would still be interesting because here would be the debate: is that Ohio State and they both have low and loss, TCU.
Yes.
Now I think it depends on how TCU would lose. Now, we know Kansas State is capable of blowing them out because we've seen Kansas State blow out really good teams over the last 6 weeks.
Yes.
And it could happen. And they were blowing TCU out at TCU earlier this year before the injuries occurred.
Right.
So that happens. And yeah, I could see Ohio State leapfrogging TCU. But if it's a close loss, the debate would be, well, here you got TCU. You're going to penalize them for losing the extra game. Ohio State didn't have to play the extra game. Ohio State lost at home to get to the extra game. Ohio State got blown out at home. So that's where I think TCU would have to get blown out. to have this debate. I think if TCU loses a close game to Kansas State, I can't imagine they're gonna penalize the the team that went to the championship, especially against a team that they already beat.
Well, true. But I think what it all comes down to, unfortunately, is ratings. And Ohio State gets the ratings. TCU
Sure,
does not.
Yeah. Oh, now you're getting into politics,
Yes,
Mark, and I don't know about this.
we
Even though
don't.
I am completely 100% behind you when it comes to college football and politics, which is why I hate and why would be so happy we're getting to 12 teams.
Yeah, because we can eliminate a lot of the politics.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I don't want to. I think it's so ridiculous well, yeah, but then we're going to sit here and debate who's 12 and 13. Who cares?
Yeah,
Sure, we'll have a fun debate over it, but I'm not gonna go crazy because some team was 13th and couldn't get into a 12-team college football playoff.
Yeah,
that's like going crazy for the 69 team in college basketball. You go crazy for like a day and then you just forget it. Nobody cares anymore.
Yeah, so the Washington Huskies didn't make a 12-team playoff, and you're going to get all upset because of something like that?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, it's only for the sake of talk radio. Is what it's for the sake of.
So that'll be something. But if USC loses and TCU loses, TCU stays in. Agreed? Or do you think if TCU and USC lose, do you think Ohio State and Alabama are both getting in?
Well, they can shift the Rose Bowl to the college football playoff real quick.
Yeah.
But I have this gut feeling we're going to see Alabama and Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And like I say, more people are going to be keen on that game than I think any of the other college.
So your gut feeling is that no madness. We're going to see the four teams in the playoffs that are in today, and Ohio State and Alabama will be in the Rose Bowl.
Exactly. Although I don't like TCU this weekend, but if it's of the adage that you mentioned that a close loss by TCU keeps them in, then that's probably how it would shake out.
And then the Heisman thing. I heard a Heisman voter yesterday say, well, Caleb Williams, he doesn't even have to win the game against Utah. He's locked in the Heisman. I just don't understand this. I don't understand how a few weeks ago.
He wasn't even in the talk.
And now, because the other guys have all lost, that he can't lose. I mean, he can lose. So now all of a sudden he's like this God Heisman guy that can lose and still, because nobody else deserves it. I mean, I don't get how nobody believes Max Duggan doesn't deserve. You can say he doesn't win it. I'm okay with that. But how are you not saying that he's not like right there just waiting for Caleb Williams to lose? Or to have a bad game, and he should still. I still believe that if I'm a voter, I would still vote for Duggan myself, because Caleb Williams has been a nice player, but Max Duggan has been so much more for so much less. I mean, if Caleb Williams was the quarterback on TCU, it wouldn't be so easy for Caleb Williams to go undefeated. I mean, he'd have a hard time, just like Max Duggan has had. And Max Duggan has had, 3 or 4 games where he's had to lead his team back in really tough games. The drive at the end against Baylor for the game-winning field goal. They're behind Kansas State. They've been in a lot of critical situations this season. Caleb Williams has been in the Utah game, which he lost, and the UCLA game. I think that's it. Have there been any other critical games for Caleb Williams that he's?
The game might have been a critical game, but he kind of.
I mean, fourth quarter. I need to make plays to win this game for my team.
There's been nothing like that. No.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking him. Like I said, I think he's right there. It should be him and Duggan. I just think I don't understand this talk about he's got the Heisman already.
Well, how ironic is it that here's Max Duggan playing on the TCU football team, number 4 seed right now, correct?
3 seed, actually.
3 seed, okay. Well, I was going to try and draw a parallel and say that he's behind Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, and Bryce Young in the Heisman race. So, he's right where the football team is.
Yeah.
But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think it's a disservice and a disgrace that he hasn't been in the talk from the get-go. Not from the get-go, but at least from the
mid-season. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly.
All right. Let's get to these games. We'll talk NFL in a little bit. Now that one game that is still a regular season game is the Buffalo game, and they needed it because they blew it last week. Matter of fact, they have lost 3 straight games with opportunities to go bowl eligible. They get their 4th time where they can now go bowl eligible. And maybe this works out perfectly for them because, and I guess, we can't keep touting the 2022 guide. It might have to start touting the 2023 guide.
I got to find somebody to put on the cover though first, Greg.
Yeah, let's see who should be on the Josh Allen maybe Josh Allen.
Well,
who's the other guy that's playing really well in the NFL?
Well, Patrick Mahomes, but he's been there before.
Yeah. So is Lamar Jackson.
All right.
There is somebody else. I'm just completely.
Maybe by default, Jalen Hurts. Who knows?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts. Yeah, absolutely. Could be Hurts. Could be Josh Williams. We'll see. We still got a half a season to go.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway, in the magazine, you can see that Buffalo 12-0-1 against the spread in second of back-to-back home games. That's
nice.
Yeah. So I just think, look, Akron came through for me last week finally, getting their big upset win. And they had a quarterback by the name of Jeff Undercluffer, who made his first start last week. He's an Albany FCS transfer. I don't know. See, it's funny when you see these guys get these starts late in the year and they play well. It's like, well, where were they 3 or 4 weeks ago? I know you didn't, I mentioned it last week. I know you didn't probably see him, but the kid from South Florida is a true freshman. He's had 2 amazing games back to back for South Florida. It's like, where's this guy been all year for South Florida quarterback? But anyway, so Akron has this quarterback that comes out, has this great game. They upset Northern Illinois. They killed him, Northern Illinois. But now to ask him to do it back-to-back weeks is kind of tough. So I'm going to stay away from this one.
Well, if I go anywhere, I would have to go to Buffalo, the team we call Team Streak. They started out 0-3, then they won 5 in a row, then they lost 3 in a row. That's where they're at right now. 3 up, or 3 down, 5 up, 3 down. Which way are they going in this particular football game? I think all you have to do is look at the numbers and the stats. You see a much, much superior defense to the Buffalo Bulls, and they are absolutely incentivized by the fact they win the game, they go bowling. That's the reason they're playing this game, because that carrot is out there for them. But there's also the possibility, and I don't think it's going to apply to Buffalo, but there aren't enough games right now, enough teams to fill the bowl schedule right now.
Yeah.
So they're right now. If Buffalo wins, they're still going to need 2 more teams that are going to end up not having winning records. So,
yeah. Matter of fact, I think last week when I was looking at it, Rice was the team that was first. So I don't remember. I don't know who would be. It's only been a week, so I can't imagine it's dropped much after that. But just keep an eye on that. But then again, I mean, most fans, of course, have already 5-win teams. I'm sure they're already well aware of what they need to do if Buffalo does not win.
As a 5-win team.
Who's that?
Auburn. You'll see Auburn make a bowl as a 5-win team if they do indeed need to fill a bowl position.
I was talking to Brian Matthews, that is on the channel, a couple of days ago regarding the hiring of Hugh Freeze. I asked him that question. He said that he doesn't even know if they would accept it.
Really?
Because of the fact that
the changeover?
Well, yeah, and that Hugh Freeze already needs to think about where my time is better spent, and on the recruiting trail is very important due to the fact that once we hit next week on Monday, the transfer portal opens, and it's like a big month for more recruiting to kind of fill out your recruiting base for the next season. So what's more important? And he said that he believes that Hugh would probably talk to the players, get their opinion. So it's not a guarantee. Doesn't mean they won't do it, but if they are invited, I think he said they're third on the list.
Right.
So I know Rice was first last week. I don't know who's second.
Army's there also.
Okay. And they still have the game against Navy.
Yes.
To see if they don't need that. All right. Speaking of the MAC championship game, what happened to the days of the MAC championship game? It used to be on a Friday or a Thursday night. I don't know what happened to that, but there are no Friday night games. Why are there no Friday night championship games? Oh, there are. Right, there is one, isn't there?
It's because they used up all of their Tuesday eligibilities.
Yeah, there are two championship games. I guess it used to be on a Thursday, though, I believe, but probably.
It was
Uh,
it was always ahead of the other games. You're
yeah,
correct.
so it was probably Thursday.
Right.
So Toledo in Ohio on a Saturday at 12, and you get the really look the dichotomy here. Look, you have Ohio winning 7 straight. They've covered 8 straight. You have Toledo all of a sudden in a funk. They're 2-3 straight up in their last 5. They dropped 5 straight covers. You have both quarterbacks for both teams banged up, but at least we know Ohio's quarterback will not play. Finn may play for Toledo. The freshman Tucker Gleason has played the last 2 games. Finn tried to play last week and looked awful. He threw a couple of picks and they took him out. Gleason finished the game. So we'll see what happens here. But I found out something that really put me over the edge and the reason why I'm taking Ohio. 2 reasons. One, they've never won the MAC title. They're 0 for 4. 2, the MAC championship game has been won the last 5 years from the dog.
Nice.
5 straight upsets in the MAC championship games. I'm going to roll with Ohio here. I just think they have enough. The quarterback that came in for Rourke, C.J. Harris, another redshirt freshman, he played decent. He had 200 yards passing, 65 rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns. So he played a lot better than what the Toledo quarterbacks have looked the last couple of weeks. You know, their redshirt freshman, and then the star quarterback for Toledo, Finn, who's not 100%. So that's why I figured I'm going to roll with Ohio.
I'm going to be on the other side of this football game, and what I see here is why isn't Ohio University the favorite in the football game? They're on the 7-game win and cover point spread streak. Toledo's dropped 2 games in a row, both as double-digit chalk, yet they come in here as the small favorite. That says a lot about what Vegas sees in the football game, that they didn't knee-jerk and go to Ohio University as the chalk in the contest.
Well, they've respected Toledo a lot this year.
Well, they sure have, yeah. And they haven't really lived up to that billing, truth be known.
No, they haven't.
No, but you look inside these numbers here, much, much, much the better defense to Toledo in the contest. You've also got Toledo's been outstanding in games off of a straight-up favorite loss. And then you take a look inside my database at conference championship games where teams come in off a straight-up favorite loss, taking on a team that's won and covered 3 in a row. It's very, very strong to the guy that really has troubles with, like Toledo does, just having just been upset. I still think they're the better football team. I'm going to back them in this contest in what I call a win situation.
All right. Now, and again, that's Saturday at noon. The Akron-Buffalo game is Friday at 1. So let's talk about the Friday night game, starting with the 7:30 game, and that is Conference USA. And again, this is the matchup that you predicted when the season began. And I'm going to take it that you are not going to change your opinion with UTSA winning back-to-back.
I'm not going to change my opinion with UTSA winning back-to-back, but I'm not going to be backing them in this football game because of the price. There's a lot to like about the dog in this football game here, and UTSA is a very, very popular team. They should be, because they know nothing but success, and we talked about this before in the past. I think we're going to see Jeff Traylor at a Power 5 conference next football season here.
Yep.
And maybe he's talking to other schools right now. We've seen that where coaches have done just that, and the football teams have completely bailed out on them.
Well, he's not talking to Alabama Birmingham.
Well, I don't even know if that would be a move up, honestly.
I'm just kind of joking since Trent Dilfer is going to be their head coach.
if you'd have stopped at Alabama,
Trent Dilfer.
Oh my, really?
Yeah, that's a Jeff Saturday move. UAB must have went, oh, okay, that's interesting. Maybe we should hire Trent Dilfer.
Then I could be a coach too, right? Huh? Wow. But you got a lot to like about North Texas here. This is a football team that comes in every football game that they play. And you've also got a football team here that their defense is rock solid in coming into this football contest here. So now you got a name and reputation UTSA football team, who I don't think personally is as good this year as they were last year. Last year they were a force. This year they're a good football team.
Yeah, they had a star running back as well that is now in the NFL.
Yes. Big factor, okay? So I'm going to back the dog in this particular contest here. I know UTSA's been there and done that before. I think this is a good chance for North Texas to put their name in the record book, and if they don't pull this upset, I think they can at least hang this number.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with UTSA. I'm not a big one, only just because it's like I'm kind of conflicted in the game, and I'm gonna go with the team that has really made me money in the past, as opposed to, oh, what a dummy, how did I not go with them? Then they covered. So I might not even take this game, but I'm going to try to take all these championship games. So and look, these two teams played earlier this year. UTSA was a 6-point favorite at home, and they won by 4. They out yardaged North Texas by almost about 150 yards, and had 32 first downs to 13 for
Wow.
North Texas. But there were 6 lead changes since the mid-third quarter in this game, including the game-winning touchdown by the Roadrunners with 15 seconds left in the game. So very weird how that you would have thought, looking at those stats, it would have been a blowout, but it wasn't the case. Another one that works in my favor is the fact, just like the MAC championship game, the last 7 CUSA champs not only won, but they covered. So keep that in mind. The championship USA dog, though, if you take a look here, 3-1 straight up the last 4 years, including UTSA's dog win last year versus Western Kentucky. So dogs have actually done pretty well, though, the last few years, which would side North Texas. Remember, because we talked about this last year, North Texas was 1-6 last year. And then they reeled off their last 5 wins, including at the end of the regular season, including beating the undefeated Roadrunners to become bowl eligible. So since starting 1-6, North Texas 12-6. A lot of people thought Seth Luttrell was out. Then they run off the wins, go to the bowl, and have a good season, championship game. Here's the one thing that should affect your pick, and this is again from the Playbook magazine. Seth Luttrell, 220-2 all time against the spread as a coach in North Texas when the team loses straight up. But 1-1 this year.
Well, a little bit of progress.
And that game covered UTSA.
There you go.
So there are some conflicting. That's why I was saying it's not so easy game for me to go all in on. I was like, I'm going to side with Texas San Antonio, but there's a lot of other reasons why you would take a look at North Texas as well.
Well, one thing we did in our midweek alert statistical newsletter this week is we broke down the common opponent games between these matchups in these conference football games. And if you look at the common opponents between North Texas and UTSA this year, they both faced 6 common opponents. North Texas won the yards in 5 of those games. UTSA split them. They won 3-3. North Texas went 5-1 straight up. Texas San Antonio 6-0. Bottom line here is they're fairly even, okay, across the board. There's no decided edge to either team in common opponent stats here, which again favors an underdog in a situation like this. I like the fact that they did go 5-1 straight up in those common opponent games to North Texas. Hence, that's the reason I'll be backing them.
All right, now we talk about the Pac-12 championship game, and Utah, the defending champs. Okay, so remember that the defending champs. They were a 3-point favorite last year in the championship game over Oregon, and they won that game. It was their first ever Pac-12 championship. They were a 2-time runner-up. USC, believe it or not, USC has one Pac-12 championship game. And again, when I'm talking about Ohio, 0-4, never won it. USC, 1 win. This is the era of championship games that we're talking about. We're not talking about how many times they've won their title in 100 years. This is just when we've had the championship game era.
That's since 1992, by the way, when they started playing conference championship games.
And USC just 1 win.
Wow.
2017.
Pac-12 was a little late getting to the conference playoffs.
Yes.
While other teams were doing it, they weren't, but nonetheless.
It opened in, what'd you say, 92?
92, yeah.
It started and other conferences. And, of course, it was the Pac-12 that was probably last.
For sure to join into the mix, right?
Yeah.
Big Ten just before them, correct?
Yeah. So there you go. One win, two runner-ups. The win was in 2017. USC's won 5 straight. They've covered 3 straight coming in. So they're playing definitely their best football of the season. Austin Jones, the Stanford transfer. Again, you got to love the transfer portal for the Trojans. Without the transfer portal, you do not get Caleb Williams. You do not get Austin Jones. You don't get Addison. I can go down the list. So Austin Jones filled in for Travis Dye, who got hurt. Another Oregon transfer gets hurt. And since then, he's done really well. Good stats. He looks like a good player to keep an eye on, even maybe at the next level. We remember Utah's 1-point win earlier this year when Utah's first and only lead of the game was when Cam Rising, on a 2-point conversion attempt, ran it in with 48 seconds left in the game.
There you go.
USC was winning the entire game. Rising had 415 yards passing and 5 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground. Caleb Williams, 381 and 5 touchdowns passing. It was a great game, and it just happened to be that Utah pulled it out late at home. And that's kind of the reason why I'm taking USC. This is actually, if I'm looking around as far as, okay, what is going to be my top play or plays of the week, and this would be it. I just think that they're playing too well. And one of the things you'll also see is that if I think two teams are really evenly matched and they're playing in this championship game, I'm going with the team that lost the first time, because I just think it's so hard to beat another team that you're so evenly matched twice in the same season, especially when USC had to go on the road to and lost that game when they had the lead the entire game. So I'm going to go ahead and take the USC Trojans -3.
Well, they are evenly matched, Greg. These two football teams, 6 common opponents. USC wins all 6 games. Utah wins 5 of them. But those 5 wins in those common opponent games, those 6 games, Utah won the yards by over 1,000 yards, 1,003 net yards. Southern Cal won them by 741 yards. This is not a Utah football team that is your typical 3-loss football team. They're very, very good. And I'm still a little bit perplexed about it. I don't know what the reason was, the tiebreaker, so forth, and whatnot, why Washington's not in this football game. But Washington, I think, I would have been more in tune to the game with Washington, because I think they would have been a real sleeper-type football team. Utah is still capable here. Obviously, the spread tells you all about what you need to know about Utah. Kyle Whittingham, a terrific coach, obviously, especially in the role of an underdog in games like this. I'm going to lean to Utah in the football game.
Oh.
I think the pressure is squarely on Southern Cal.
Wait a second. Didn't you just say that Alabama and Ohio State are going to play in the Rose Bowl?
Something. I'll be right on one, or I'll be right on the other.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I like
go,
that.
Huh?
Okay.
I'm playing 50 card here. Okay?
That is spoken like a long-time true handicapper.
There you go.
a Hall of Fame handicapper. He knows how to hedge his bets.
There you go.
Okay. And now look, they could lose and cover because Utah beat them by 1.
They did. Yes,
so USC can win by 1. Pay back the favor.
They could.
Yeah. Not likely, but it could happen. You never know. All right. I like it. All right. So Saturday at 12, Big 12 championship game. Kansas State and TCU. Boy, I wonder who's going to be watching that MAC championship game while this is going on. TCU undefeated, favored by 2.5. K-State won Big 12 title back in 2003. It's also the last time they played in the Big 12 championship game. TCU made 1 appearance. That was in 2017, lost to Oklahoma. This is their 2nd appearance, never won. Here's a trend from Playbook Magazine. TCU is 1-13 against the spread, off a double-digit straight-up win when they take on an opponent that has revenge on their minds, like Kansas State does, and is coming off a straight-up ATS win. And by the way, they're 0-1 this year in that trend. So that's not good for TCU.
This is meaningful revenge, Greg. This
meaningful. Yes, very meaningful.
Yeah, I mean,
this is as meaningful as it gets.
Yeah, 28-point halftime lead to get blown out like that, or get outscored 28 points with the big halftime lead.
Yeah, 28-10 was the lead. Yep.
Exactly, right. And then they didn't score a point thereafter. Nope. Again, I'm going to go back to these common opponent stats because I think they're very, very meaningful in games like this. It's like a tale of the tape for 2 boxers in a championship match, if you will. You look at these 2 teams, they played 8 common opponents. Obviously, TCU wins all 8 games; they're undefeated. Kansas State wins 7 of those football games. To the spread, Kansas State goes 6-2. TCU goes 5-2-1, almost practically dead even. In the stats, both teams win 6, lose 2, almost dead even. Total yards, Kansas State 640, TCU 562, just about dead even. My biggest qualm in the game is this: is when TCU beat Kansas State earlier this year, they were favored by 3.5 points on their home field. Now they're favored by 2.5 and what might likely be 3 when they play tomorrow.
Why, you
What?
think there should be a pick 'em?
Absolutely. I
Oh,
mean,
I do too. Sure.
yeah, absolutely. But they're not because they're undefeated and because they're the number 3 team in the college football
Hmm.
playoff ranking. That's the reason why. So just on ability alone, that's the reason I think there's value to Kansas State in this football game, if for no other reason because of the spread and the very, very meaningful revenge in the game.
Yeah, and look, and these TCU games have been so crazy this year and close in some respects that even just taking, like we just said with USC Utah, even just taking 2.5, 3 points could be all the difference in the world, because you could get into a situation where there's like a 2 point play on the line at the end of the game that some team decides I'm going to go for it. This is the actual game where you can see either coach, if they score a late touchdown, I'm not going overtime, I'm going for the 2. So, and when you're in that situation, you want the points. So,
That's a real good point. And I think more likely Sonny Dice to do something just like that
yeah.
because, he's been rolling the dice all year long, been coming up, hasn't thrown craps yet. So, I think Sonny Dice would be the guy to do just that.
And Will Howard has looked a lot better this year than he's had the previous couple of years. I mean, boy, Kansas State wishes, where's this Will Howard from last year? But he's matured and he's looked a lot better since taking over, which actually he took over in the TCU game and
Yes, he
then
did.
came back and actually started 4 of the last 5 games. In all 4 of his starts, all wins, 11-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Martinez had 1 start, lost it. The Texas game. That's why Howard is going to end up starting the game. Kansas State has won and covered their last 3 this year by a 126-61 margin.
Yeah, they're on a real nice run right now. And in that game, as you mentioned here, Will Howard comes off the bench in relief of Adrian Martinez. He gets hurt. The third string quarterback comes in for Kansas State. First play, pick 6.
Yep.
Oh boy, there you
Yeah.
go. So anyway, it's Will Howard's job right now, and if he
Yes.
struggles in this football game, we're going to see Martinez. I mean, it would be probably an inspired Martinez if we do see him.
Okay. Now, yeah, that's true. Now we have 4 games in the middle of the afternoon after those early noon games, and one of them will be at 3:30, and that's the Sun Belt matchup, which we predicted in the beginning of the season. We both had Coastal Carolina. Now, this is the only championship game I did not take. And the reason is because even though it looks like Grayson McCall is not playing, we have heard this before many times. And then all of a sudden, hey, there's Grayson McCall standing up and playing. So we don't know. I would have to bet he's not going to play, especially when you're talking about a kid that's probably like 99% coming out of the NFL draft. You don't want to hurt his draft stock with an injury or anything like that. Plus, he's had his glory. He's looked great. He's had 3 seasons at Coastal Carolina. He has been the Sun Belt Player of the Year all 3 seasons. That's how big time a player Grayson McCall has been to this program, which also is the part of the reason why I think Jamie Shadwell is going to try to find a get out of Coastal. Yeah. Where can I go now that my superstar quarterback's gone? Not that he can't coach them to play well, but it's much easier if he just leaves now and picks up that job opportunity. So that's the reason I'm staying away, because if he plays, I'd be all over Coastal Carolina. Matter of fact, I might even just sprinkle a little bit of money on the money line just in case anyway. Not just because of that, but because, all right, we'll see what happens. I mean, Troy is the heavy favorite. They haven't been in this spot before. This is only the 4th ever championship game in the history. They haven't been there before. But I am afraid of just a one-on-one matchup, because if you look at Troy, they've been very impressive this season. They've covered 9 of their 11 games. And they've just really played. Like last week, they got into a little bit of a hole. So you would have thought, well, there'd be some pressure. It's early third quarter. It's a one-score game with Arkansas State. Then they go on this like big-time run and just destroy Arkansas State in the second half. So they showed that they can come up with the pressure situations as well. But yeah, that's the thing. I've seen the backup quarterback play for Coastal Carolina so far, and it ain't pretty. And that's the reason why I would be afraid to take Coastal without Grayson McCall.
I agree. I mean, I like all your points. Grayson McCall makes the team go, makes the team work. I can give you Jamie Chadwell numbers that would be eye popping. Okay, but as a dog, he's terrific, obviously, in his career because he's won a lot of football games and he's done them in surprising fashion. But when you dress him up as a dog of fewer than 14 points, he's 10-1 to the spread.
Well, the question though is was Grayson McCall?
That's exactly my point, right?
Yeah, was he playing? Yeah.
Grayson McCall probably had his fingerprints on 9 of those games. Okay?
Yeah. Well, I looked at it, and McCall 5-0 straight up as a dog. Well, Coastal Carolina 5-0 straight up as a dog with McCall starting.
There you go. And the other side of the coin is the backup. His name is Jared Guest. He's really been a bomb. Okay. 19 or 18 for 42, less than 43% completed passes, 270 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions.
You know what? I wouldn't surprise me if they went to one of those Taysom Hill offenses because they got that Carpenter kid at quarterback. He's basically like a wildcat guy. He's a big guy. They put him in short down situations, to run the ball, that kind of thing. Wouldn't surprise me. If Jamie Shadwell said, you know what, if we're not going to win with this guy, so let's just try to win with defense and special teams and try to run the football.
Let's mix it up a little bit. Good game plan. I think it would be. It'd probably be effective as well because they wouldn't see it coming or wouldn't be able to prepare for it anyway. But there's just too much pedigree for Coastal Carolina to ignore in a game like this, especially with the line being what it is. It would have never been anywhere near this number.
Yeah.
Had this quarterback situation being what it is. So I'll hold my nose, take the points with the Chanticleers, and we'll see what happens here.
All right. By the way, Coastal Carolina in the championship game in 2020 could not play it because of COVID. So, they haven't been able to win it. And this is their opportunity with or without Grayson. All right, 4 o'clock, Conference USA. We both had Central Florida as the champs when the season began. But here's, again, another one of these situations. I said it with USC Utah, I said it with Kansas State TCU, and this is another one where I'm taking the team that lost the first time around to me, evenly matched teams, Central Florida and Tulane. It's also back in the same location. So Tulane had that awful start against Central Florida. They came back. They were down 31-14 in the third quarter. They came back. They actually got it to 38-31 early in the fourth quarter, but they could not finish the job. Plumlee, the quarterback for the Knights, ran all over them, and they had 336 rushing yards in the game as a team. So you got to figure Tulane has got to figure out, you got to do something to right that ship. Pratt, the quarterback for Tulane, had a good game in that one. Spears is an underrated running back, by the way. I know I talk a lot about Keaton Mitchell as an underrated back for Eastern Carolina in the AAC, the same conference. But this kid Spears is also a nice little running back to keep an eye on. And I'm assuming because they were behind, he only had 8 carries, but he had 130 yards. He had 16-yard average. So he gets the ball more. They don't get off to a bad start. That bodes well. Tulane is on a run of 7-1 straight up and against the spread in their last 8, but they're only a loss to Central Florida. The favorite in AAC championship games have won 5 straight, covering 3 of those 5. UCF is a 2-time champ, 2017 and 2018. Keeping in mind, both of those games were in Orlando, not on the road. This is Tulane's first ever AAC championship game appearance.
And they're dressing up as the favorite.
And they're the favorite.
Yes, exactly right, which concerns me.
Sure.
If for no other reason, you don't find teams very often that do what they did this year. They went from 2 wins to 10 wins. That's a quantum leap for a football team to do, like that Tulane's done this football season, and then to be favored in a game like this.
I'm actually surprised I saw the odds go up in one of the books to 3.5. I know it's a small number, but it's like I think 3 is fine. That line should not go any. If anything, I think that line would go down a little bit, not to 3.5.
You've got a coach in Gus Malzahn here too. He's won 18 of his 25 games
Yeah.
since he's been there. He doesn't lose with a lot of regularity. Especially where the number is now at 3.5, I've got to grab the points here in a contest like this. I like Tulane real well. I'm a huge Willie Fritz fan. I'd love to see him win this football game and he hoists the trophy and does all those good things. But I think the value is in the UCF in this football contest.
Now, it would be interesting if Fritz does get his opportunity to coach in the Power 5. I mean, I don't think he'd get an opportunity with a big school. The Georgia Tech job is gone, so that would be something that would have made sense. But, we'll see. Maybe he has to – and I believe he's going to have some of his players, some of his key guys, including his quarterback, will be back next year. So he doesn't have to rush it maybe as much as Shadwell. So we'll see.
And he can build on his resume as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because like you said, he was there when he only won 2 games.
Right. Exactly.
Mountain West, this was the one we both predicted from the beginning of the season, Boise over Fresno. Well, I'm going to change that to Fresno over Boise, but 51 to 49%. This is just going to be, and I'll take those points, just like I was saying with Kansas State. I'm taking every little tiny bit of points I could take in these matchups that are really this tough. There's so many things to look at here. This is going to be the 4th championship game matchup between these two teams. Boise's up 2-1. Keep in mind, Fresno has covered all 3 as dogs. So they're the 4th matchup of these two teams in the championship game. Fresno's been dogs all 4. And Fresno has only won once, but they've covered all 3 in the championship game. Fresno's on a 7-game win streak. They've won the last 5 when Jake Hayner's back. Of course, he got hurt week 3 at USC. The one thing that concerns me, the one thing, is that Jake Hayner played at home against Boise State last year. And they were a 3-point favorite in that game. It was a sellout. It was like the first sellout in that stadium in like 8 years. So they were going nuts. They had a good season. Everything was going well. Boise won 40-14, and Hayner threw 3 interceptions. So that concerns me a little bit. You never know if a team has a number on a quarterback, that kind of thing, or even a matchup. And let's remember, Boise beat Fresno earlier this year, week 5, 40-20 without Hayner. But we remember how bad that offense was those first couple of games when Hayner was injured. They lost to UConn that first game. The game was tied, though, in the third quarter, late in the third quarter, 20-20. So even without Hayner, it was a 20-20 game late in the third quarter, and then Boise stretched it out late and won the game. But to me, it's so close that I'm going with Hayner. Hayner's the best player on the field, and I think he may be the difference maker.
Well, he might well be the difference maker in this football game here. I also like Jeff Tedford, their head coach, who, by the way, in his career has been outstanding when he plays with double exact revenge. You beat him twice, you don't beat him a third time. In fact, with Fresno, it's happened 6 times where teams have taken out twice exact. He's won all 6 games in the rematch, and
I like it.
And didn't lose to the spread. He went 5-0-1 to the spread.
Okay.
So he's got that working for him in this football game here. I like that real well. You've also got, I think, here in this football contest here, this is a Boise team that it just sticks in my mind, and I just can't get rid of it. The fact that they lost to Texas El Paso by 28 points as a 16-point favorite earlier in this football season here. Now, I know a lot has changed since then, but that shows me the sign of a team that can collapse at the nearest sight of anything going wrong in a football game, and it can go wrong with them here real quickly. I know they're at home. The field isn't what it used to be. It hasn't been that way in a long, long time. But I think there's a lot of value with Fresno State here. I love Jeff Tedford as a dog, and I love Jeff Tedford in revenge. He's both this particular week. Give me the Bulldogs plus the points.
Yeah, some other things. You look here. They were outgained by Utah State. They were outgained by BYU. These are games lately. They beat Fresno and San Diego State earlier this year. Good teams, but that was when San Diego State had crappy quarterbacks. And again, Fresno had the backup because Hanna was out. And let's also remember that they very nearly just lost to Wyoming 2 weeks ago. They needed that interception in the end zone, or they wouldn't even be in the championship game. It would be Wyoming possibly in the championship game. What I do like, though, is that their young freshman quarterback, Talon Green, who did not look very good in his first few starts, is really starting to come on. And as much, do you know who the offensive coordinator is at Boise?
I'm not sure.
Okay, a familiar name and former NFL head coach by the name of Dirk Cutter.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
So
You mentioned it. I do remember. Yes.
So he took over the job after week 4 when they fired the offensive coordinator. Cutter comes in, and since then, they're 7-1. They started 2-2, including 6-2 against the spread in those 8 games. Talon Green, the redshirt freshman, who has, if you're looking at how he's played since week 8, a 10-0 interception to or touchdown to interception ratio, 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 91 rushing yards last week in the win against Utah State. So Talon Green, the quarterback for Boise, and they're really a running team with Helani and a defensive team. Now they got the quarterback playing well. So that's why it was a little bit more difficult for me to take Fresno in this matchup, and I think it's just a real tough one-on-one. But what did put me over the top was what you said. You got Hainer at quarterback, and you have Tedford going against an inexperienced head coach in this type of situation. That's why I'm leaning towards the Bulldogs.
I'm with you 100% in this football game. Doesn't surprise me at all if they win this contest here. I think Boise's a bit of a fraud. I know they're at home, but I think they can get exposed in this game.
I don't really think we have to talk too much, believe it or not, against what we would have normally thought would have been the game of the day, the SEC championship game. And that's just because it really doesn't mean anything now. LSU ruined that by losing to Texas A&M last week. They're 1-4 against the spread away from home, so that's not good. They do have 4 upsets this year when they've been an underdog 5 times. But the one time they did not win when they were an underdog, they lost to Tennessee at home by 40-13. And we know Georgia is on the level and better than Tennessee. So this is the one game where I would just stay away from because I have not been overly impressive, even with Georgia the last month or two. They had that game against Missouri that was ugly. The Kentucky game was ugly. Even the Georgia Tech game was kind of ugly early on last week. So it's a lot of points to be given up. I'm going to take the game because I said I would take every game. I'll take the points, but I think it's going to be one of those 24-8 games. I just don't think it's going to be a real competitive game. I would be kind of surprised if it was.
We call this out on our podcast, Greg. I'm sure you're well aware of it because you helped produce the podcast for us. And the fact of the matter is, I think Georgia's sort of on easy street right now, but also feeling the pressure. Feeling the pressure for being the number 1 team in the country, being undefeated, being the former defending national champion. And it goes to the point that if you take a look at what their body of work is in their last 4 football games, it's down dramatically from what it was their first 8 games of the season here. They're averaging, if you will, I'm looking this up here right now as I'm speaking to you, they averaged 540 yards their first 8 games of the season. They're averaging 420 yards a game the last 4 football contests coming into this contest. It tells me the noose is getting tighter and tighter on the Georgia Bulldogs.
Might have been better if they lost. Maybe even it would be better if they lost this game here, so they can maybe get some of that. Sort of like what happened when they were the number 2 ranked team taking on Tennessee, which I thought was ridiculous anyway. And when people were going, "Do you think Michigan should be number 1 this week?" I was like, "Do not put Michigan at number 1. You'll kill my team. They will lose to Purdue if you do that. I don't want to see anybody number 1 but Georgia. They deserve to be number 1. They're defending champs. Just keep them that way." And you know how it is. It's real tough. Even we've said this before. Even Alabama has lost. Matter of fact, out of the championship Saban has won, I'm pretty positive that most of them he's had a loss. It's not easy to go undefeated.
No, it's not at all. You're targeted. All the while you're feeling the pressure. Everything just mounts and mounts and mounts the further and deeper you go. You've also got a head coach in Brian Kelly who's outstanding as an underdog off a loss in his career. 18-7 to the spread in that role. And the tougher the opponent, the better he is in those games. He's 11-3 to the spread. I think this is a nice take for LSU in this contest here. I don't know if they're going to threaten Georgia on the scoreboard, but I think they can certainly take home the money in this football game.
Yeah, I'm concerned with LSU's psyche after the loss last week, because they go from we're in the national championship race as a heavy favorite last week to now being it's over. Now it's just about. So I wonder where they are. They might be okay. It might be, hey, nobody still expected us here. We're a 3-touchdown, underdog. We have nothing to lose. Brian Kelly's a good coach. But yeah, that's what we're not talking about a 7-point spread. We're talking 18 points. That's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points. And where LSU is right now, it's where they're going to be in the bowl season. If they lose this game, they're going to be in the Outback Bowl. So, we can talk about that when they get there. And whether or not they'll be excited about being there, probably, obviously not.
What do you think? Do you think it will probably see like Penn State against either Tennessee or LSU?
Yeah, something like that. Exactly right. Exactly.
That's a good game.
Yes, it's a nice matchup. There's no question of it, but it's not the college football playoff.
No. All right, and then finally the night games. We can start with the one that nobody will be watching. Not sure anybody will be watching either game, to tell you the truth, but maybe out of curiosity, they'll be more glued to the Michigan game. But yeah, the AACC. What I like about this year's playoff, we didn't talk about it. I like the fact that it looks like we're going to have SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. I like that, especially. We don't need the ACC in the championship this year because they haven't been very good. Outside of Florida State, who's been a nice surprise, and that's been nice. Wake Forest has kind of been they kind of went downhill as soon as Syracuse beat Clemson and as soon as Clemson beat Syracuse and ruined their shot, they went downhill, kind of gave up. Miami's been a disgrace. You only have to look at maybe Duke.
Surprise team, right?
North Carolina, their opponent, Clemson's opponent, all of a sudden, the last two starts, what happened to Drake May and this offense? I mean, they were leading Georgia Tech 17-0 early, and since that point, they fell apart. They lose the game to Georgia Tech. They lose to NC State with the third-string quarterback. But I think this is just going to be a game where I'll take North Carolina. I'm not going to take them to win, but I'll take the points because I don't believe in Clemson. Remember, we talked about it last week. South Carolina was a good play as a double-digit underdog, and they came through and won the game. This is just not this offense for Clemson. The passing game is bad. So, yeah, I can kind of see this game being like an ACC. Nobody's going to really watch it game that's 23-17 or something like that, with Clemson winning kind of ugly.
I'm almost for sure you're going to see Clemson win this football game. And I would probably lay the points if for no other reason, the fact their defense is vastly superior in a football game like this. Dabo Swinney's a bit embarrassed right now, and I think it doesn't even matter how big he wins the football game. He's not going to be in any talk at all, obviously, in the college football playoffs.
No.
This might be his college football playoff game per se.
I guess, yeah. I mean, hopefully they'll get a good matchup in the bowls, but yeah, no chance. And by the way, Clemson 7-1 when they're in championship games. They only lost in 2009. And how about this? The ACC title game, the last 10 years, the favorite has won all 10 in the ACC championship game, covering 7 out of 10. And if you look at it, Clemson, they lost to Virginia Tech back in if you look at it, was the opposite. Clemson beat Virginia Tech in 2011. It was the last time the ACC dog won the championship game. It happened to be Clemson as the underdog, beating the 5th-ranked Hokies of Virginia Tech. Okay, by the way, they're only the second title appearance for North Carolina. And when they lost in 2015, they lost to Clemson. Last one, Purdue and Michigan. Michigan's a 17-point favorite. And if you know Purdue and Jeff Brom as a dog, you have to take Purdue. That's exactly what I'm doing as a 17-point dog. 15-1 against the spread as a road dog of 11 or more points. That is Purdue. They're 3-3 straight up ATS as a dog this year. Their biggest loss of the year was 21 points to Iowa, 24-3. And that was actually their last loss, too. Jeff Brom, and you can find this in the Playbook magazine, 22-6 against the spread as a dog of 4 or more points.
Nice.
And he's 2-0 in that spot this year.
Yeah, it's all about the role for Jeff Brom. Give him points, take the points. He lays the points, fade him, and he's in that role this week. And yet you can't, if you're a human, you have to have a letdown here for Michigan. I know
you have to.
They did last year against Ohio State because they played a crummy Iowa football team.
Yeah.
You're gonna play a gutsy Purdue football team here this particular week here. I think this game is a really, really strong side to Purdue plus the points, and I got to grab up everything they offer.
And how about this? Big Ten defending champs are 4-0.
Oh, there you go.
So if you're a defending champ playing in the Big Ten championship game, you have never lost. Okay, that's college football. All right, so that'll wrap it up for college football coverage. Championship week. It should be a lot of fun. We're recording this on a Thursday. It all begins on Friday. So thanks to everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can do that real easy. Check out the subscription button on the bottom of the video here. You can also share the video if you enjoy it. Let us know what you think about the video. If you have any questions or comments regarding games, anything like that, let us know. Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk NFL in just a few minutes.
Hey, Greg, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.